get started. First up, I'd like to hear from you folks before we get into the details of it. When we talk about getting back on track, just wondering, what is it that you hope to get out of, say, the next hour? What is it that you hope to walk away with? Whatever you have in mind, you can unmute and just talk, or you can put it on the chat, whatever works for you.
Can I go first?
Sorry, can you be a little louder, please?
Yeah. So I have been doing weight training and running for about the last 20 years. My lifestyle has changed drastically, which involves frequent travel. And so I think what I'm looking at getting is how can I still be consistent with the frequent travel, change in time zones, and hence energy levels?
Excellent. Very clear question. We'll certainly address that. Others, what do you think you want to get out of this? What, if you can share, what is not going well, or what you would like for it to go better? Take this as an extension to the last session about building habits. Absolutely. Yes, they are absolutely connected. But today, like I said, we're going to talk about something specific, right? About how to stay on track or how to get back on track. Being consistent, irrespective of seasons and reasons. Got it. Shalini says my voice is not audible. Am I audible for the rest of you folks? Yeah? Okay. Shalini, maybe you just have to look into the volume. Okay, so let's get started. I'd like to hear more from you. See, today, yes, we're going to talk about consistency. Yes, we're going to talk about getting back on track and stuff. But the larger picture here is, do we understand the big picture with fitness and nutrition, right? What we're trying to do. More often than not, we're too concerned about the small picture. What am I doing today? What am I doing this week, right? How much weight am I going to lose in the next month? Or can I get to my goal before this person's wedding or before this vacation, right? We're always thinking about the small picture.
Sorry, I lost you for a moment there.
Sorry,
Hello?
wait, I lost you all. Power cut at the perfect time. Sorry about that. So if there are any issues, if you can't hear me or so, just let me know. Hopefully now it's okay. Yeah, so we want to take a step back, right? I'd invite all of you to take a step back and look at the slightly bigger picture here, right? What exactly are we trying to do? Where are we going? It's not about tomorrow. It's not about next week. It's much larger than that. So with that in mind, I have a couple of questions for you guys. First up, can someone help me understand this? We're always talking about staying on track, getting back on track. Is there really a track? What do you think?
I mean, I think there was a track when I was consistent, but now it's a maze.
Okay, that's a great way of putting it. When you know what you're doing, when you know where you're going, it feels like there is a track, right? You're going ahead. But when you're lost, it definitely feels like a maze, right? It's all over the place. Yeah. Anyone else? Do you guys think that there is a track, one particular track that you should stick to?
I'm sure there's always going to be a track if we want to see progress, or at least if we don't want to, go back in our progress, at least stay where we are to the point that we have progressed. The track could change from time to time, but there should always be a track that we can keep up with.
Got it. So there is one somewhere, right? That's what you mean. We may or may not be able to see it, but there is a track somewhere there. Okay? So I agree, but let's think about it more like, let's say you're going from point A to point B, right? Let's say you're driving from one place to another. You know where you are, you know where you need to be. You have to get from point A to point B. And I'm sure you'll all agree that there is not just one track to go from point A to point B. There are multiple tracks, right? Even if you take, I don't know, a 10-kilometer distance in your city, if you're going from one place to another, there are multiple ways to get there. Depends on what your goal is. More often than not, what we're thinking about is, what is the fastest way to get there? That's what we're always thinking, right? How quickly can I get there? Which is the shortest route? Which one, what is the least, say, confusing route? What is the most efficient route, right? Rarely do we say, okay, you know what? I'm just going to take all the time. I'm just going to enjoy the journey and I'm going to, make my way there. Because life doesn't let us do that, right? Because we want to get to our goals quickly so we can go to the next set of goals, so on and so forth. But a lot of times it does feel like a maze, even if you take that 10-kilometer distance that I'm talking about, okay? Now, in your city, if you're going from, I don't know, point A, which you know, to a point B, which you even heard of, it can be kind of clear. But let's say you're in a completely different city. Is it still going to be clear? It's definitely going to be a maze, right? Like you have no idea where these roads go. You have no clue how you're going to get there, how long it's going to, take you to get there. So first thing to understand is that there is no one track, but there are multiple tracks. Okay, so there is no one way to get to a goal. It could be even the exact same goal. Different people might approach it differently. For example, I might say, you know what, I'm going to take the year to get to some goal. You might say, no, I want to get there in 3 months. So how you approach it and how I approach it are going to be very different. So the first thing to remember is that there is a track, but then you need to understand what the right track for you is. How fast you need to get there? How hard do you need to work? Do you even need to, stress about it? Or is it much simpler than you really think it is? Yeah. Now, that brings us to our next question. Is it possible to always stay on track? Okay, it's the first question. Is it possible? The answer is yes. It's definitely possible to always stay on track. It's possible to do many things. Right? Like if you take, let's talk about fitness. If you take a professional athlete, now a professional athlete is pretty much always on track. And that's why they're professional and that's why they're able to perform at that level, right? No deviations, always on track, sleeping 9 hours a day. Back again. Yeah. So eating exactly what they need to eat, all this is a part of staying on track. Just the second question, is it probable? Is it probable? I mean, is it even realistic to expect someone to always stay on track? Is it even realistic? For the common man, if you're not someone whose livelihood depends on something around fitness, it's not a realistic expectation if you think about it. Yes, we want to stay on track, but there are so many variables in life. So many things happen in life, and it's a much longer journey than we think it is. So trying to always stay on track is not necessary. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's also counterproductive. Now, when you look at, I don't know, an influencer or a coach or someone you basically look up to, right? Depends on what the field is. You're probably thinking that this person is always on. That's not true. Right? Most people, or 99.99% of people, are not always on track. There are always people going off track. There are always deviations, right? To give you a small example, a lot of my friends, a lot of people who know me, just kind of know me on the outside, who don't really know what my life is like, they assume that I hardly eat. Okay? They assume that I hardly eat. And this is common, right? I mean, most people think that if you're probably never eating at all, right? And they think that the kind of discipline that I have is so strong that I never deviate. that I would never make a mistake, that I would never binge eat, that I would never eat something that I should not be eating, right? Well, all that is basically a perception because of what they get to see. And I'm sure all of us think of different people and think that, okay, this is how that person is. They have everything figured out. They have everything, lined up one after the other. So this is how they live. But in reality, that is not how it works. And that's the crux of today's talk. What I mean by that is, if you're expecting yourself to stay on track every single day, every single week, every single month, it's not going to be possible. It's not necessary. It's going to be stressful. It's going to be overwhelming. And you're going to feel like, oh my God, I'm not doing better. I'm not doing well enough. I need to do better. I need to do better. Look at that person. Look at this person. Right? But thing to keep in mind is, when you look at another person, you probably understand less than 1% of that person's life. Okay? And less than 1% of that person's struggles and constraints and deviations and everything. But you understand 100% of your issues, of your concerns, of your deviations. Okay? So you're comparing your 100% knowledge of yourself with 1% knowledge on someone else. This is what happens on Instagram also. Right? Instagram highlight reels. People only put up things that they want to put up. Everyone, including me, including you. Right? So we look at those whatever posts or images or experiences, and we believe that that is how their life is always. And so it is normal for us to think that, oh my God, everyone seems to be on track. Why do I keep going off track? Why do I keep gaining weight? Why do I want to do this, but it doesn't happen? So the first thing I want you to keep in mind is that there is absolutely no one who is always on track. Everyone is going through what you're going through at a different level, in a different level. Everyone wants to do better. For some people, it's about, I don't know, losing some weight. For some people, it's about playing a sport. For some people, it's about taking care of their health. It's different things for different people, but the feeling, the emotion associated with it is the same. I'll give you an example. So about 2 to 3 years ago, I had this fitness program shoot with another fitness professional. So this guy is someone who's extremely strong, okay, very well known in the industry. I mean, ripped, looks great, right? I mean, he's an athlete. Life for him revolves around his movements, his lifting, his training, and all that. And if I'm not wrong, he was at about 8% body fat. Okay? 8% body fat is extremely lean. And he's not a skinny guy. He was, I want to say, about 90 kilos, 95 kilos at 8% body fat. Okay, that's like a bodybuilder almost. Okay? So the two of us were chatting, whatever, and someone wanted to take a photo. So we're there, we get a photo. The moment he looks at the photo, I didn't even look at my photo. I don't. He looks at the photo, and the first thing he says is, oh my God, I look so chubby. Okay. This is someone who's at 8% body fat. Okay. At 95 kilos, can clean about 180 to 200 kilos, can deadlift about 300 kilos, right? Is one of the, in his field, he's a winner, but looks at it and he says that I have to lean out more. I have to lose more weight. Right? So as you can see, this never ends. There is no end to this. Right? Another simple example, right? Forget bodybuilding and body weight and stuff. Take tennis. Okay? If you see any amateur playing tennis, right? Even someone like me who hardly knows how to play, right? When you miss a point, right? When you hit the ball on the net or you hit the ball outside of the court, you see that they get frustrated. They're like, I wish you could do better. Why are you doing this? They're talking to themselves, right? They get so annoyed with themselves because they didn't do something perfectly. Now, this is an amateur. Now, just take another case in tennis. Go to the Wimbledon finals, right? The best of it all. Players do there when they miss a point. They do the same thing, right? They beat themselves up. They're like, I can't believe you did this. I can't believe you missed this point, right? So my point here is that irrespective of the level, irrespective of what person you're talking about, the expectations we have of ourselves are the same, and the emotions that we have of ourselves are the same. We expect to be perfect. we expect ourselves to be perfect. And that is the crux of the problem. We think staying on track means being perfect every step along the way. Okay, with respect to say fitness or weight loss or whatever, we think staying on track means eating exactly what we should eat, sleeping exactly when we should, training every day regularly. That's what qualifies as staying on track. If I miss one of these things, if I have one bad meal, or if I miss one day of training, or if I don't know, if I miss a month of training, we feel like we've lost the plot. We feel like we've gone off track. Okay, and what do? We try to compensate for those things by doing things that we would usually not do. And that's where, this downward spiral starts over and over and over again. So that's why it's important to remember that while it is possible to stay on track, it is not really probable, it is not really necessary to always be on that one track. Perfection is not the goal. If you're looking for perfection, you're never going to achieve it. This is why, the Wimbledon tennis finals, players are really pissed off because they're expecting themselves to be perfect. Having trained for tens of thousands of hours, they're expecting themselves to be perfect. And even if someone who's been training for tens of thousands of hours on one particular skill, basically take a racket, take a tennis ball, you have to hit it inside that box. That's that person's life. If that person is not able to stay perfect, forget even returning someone's, whatever serve. Even a service in tennis, which basically does not involve any variable, just about you throwing the ball up in the air and smacking it, even that, we are unable to be perfect. Right? So when perfection is not possible with tens of thousands of hours of specific training, you can imagine how imperfect most of our lives will be. And it is important to accept this. Yeah, are you guys with me up until right now? Awesome. So now that we know that perfection is not the goal, we need to understand that what staying on track means is actually heading in the right direction. That's what staying on track means. There's this beautiful line that says, it's not about who you are, but what you become. And it's great because you don't know where you really are going. Every day, you're changing directions. But as long as you're heading in the right direction, big picture, everything is on track. Okay? The problem is when we deviate too much and go completely in another direction. That's when we get lost. Okay? So to summarize, it is possible to stay on track, but we need to understand what staying on track means. It means heading in the right direction. Now let's get to some specifics. Specifically speaking, for most of us here, we are talking about consistency, either with respect to training, or we're talking about weight loss. So basically, I need to eat a certain way to get there. Or we're talking about general health. I need to do A, B, C, and D for me to be in good health, right? So with those things in mind, how do you stay on track? I'm going to talk to you about 5 specific actions that you can do. Okay? Some small picture, some big picture. Some of these you probably already do. Some of these you probably don't. But we're going to talk about 5 things. If you can do these 5 things, and if you can chill out while you're doing these 5 things, staying on track will be very, very simple. And I'm telling you this from experience. Right? The one thing that I've done really well is to stay on track. Right? It's been 15, 16, 17 years that I've been on track. Right? But again, what I mean by staying on track is heading in the right direction. I'm not talking about being perfect. Okay. So how exactly do you do that? Let's talk about this. Point number 1. Have regular checkpoints. Okay. For all 5 points, I would like for you to kind of have a, Google Maps in mind, like a GPS. You're going from point A to point B. Okay. As you're driving, your map basically is your checkpoint, right? Your map tells you if you're on track or not. If you're off track, it tells you you're going off track. The first thing to remember is if you're not even aware where you're going, you can never course correct. So the first thing is to have regular checkpoints. What does that mean? It means you identify your metrics, track them, and observe them without emotion. What does that mean? First up, what are your metrics? Your metrics are essentially what you're working towards. Okay. If you're working towards weight loss, body weight is your metric. Simple. Don't get confused. Okay. If you're a runner who is trying to run longer and longer, then your running metrics, distance, is your metric. If you are someone who's trying to get stronger, then your squat and deadlift and press or whatever, those are your metrics. Right? You don't have to be concerned with every metric that everyone is talking about. Oh, that person's talking about resting heart rate. This person's talking about body weight. That person's talking about, I don't know, how fast I can run 78 meters in. I want to track all these things. If you track everything, you'll go crazy. No one can. Give you an example. Take that tennis player, right? Let's talk about Roger Federer. What do you think his metrics are? Is he measuring his progress based on how much he can deadlift? No, makes zero sense for him. It doesn't matter how much he deadlifts. For him, his metrics are different. It's about speed and agility and precision, around tennis. What are your metrics? I want you to take about 20 to 30 seconds to think about this. What is your real goal? What are you really working on? What is it that you want? That is the question you need to answer. Once you answer that, metrics will present themselves. Let's say you're a diabetic. Okay? And let's say your blood sugar is 320. Okay? So your goal is to not be a diabetic, is to improve that condition. So your metric then is your blood sugar number. That's the metric that you have to keep tracking. That is your GPS. Right? If the number is gradually going down over a period of time, you're on the right track. It doesn't matter what else is happening. If your number is suddenly shooting up, then you know you're off track. Something's going wrong. Then you start looking into it, right? So this metric is basically going to be your GPS. If you don't know what your metrics are, you're always going to be confused and you're always going to be lost. You're always going to feel like you're not doing enough. Let's say sleep is your problem. Let's say you're unable to sleep well. Then the metric you need to track are your sleep metrics. How long am I sleeping? How refreshed do I feel when I wake up? Let's say you're someone who's constantly getting stressed out and getting pissed off at people. Then that is your metric. How can I stay calm? How often do I lose my cool? Right? So you need to understand what your goal is and what the associated metrics are. This is the very first step. Without this, nothing else will fall in place. It will always feel confusing. Okay. So step one, identify your metrics. And this is specific only to you. It doesn't matter what another person is doing. Number two, track these metrics closely. We'll use body weight here as an example. Now, let's say my goal is to maintain my body weight. I don't want to lose weight. I don't want to gain weight. Let's say my goal is to maintain my body weight. And let's say my body weight is X kilos. So I'm tracking my body weight every week or every other week or 3 times a week or every day, whatever, right? But I'm tracking them closely. If I don't track them, I don't know what is even happening. I'm sure if you think about this from a work perspective, you would understand, right? If you're working on a project, you want to know how this project is going or not. If you're not tracking anything, you have no clue what is happening, right? So it's important to identify your metrics, track them. And the most important part here, the third thing is you want to observe these metrics without emotion. What does that mean? Let's say my weight is, my goal is body weight maintenance, right? So I'm checking my weight and it's always within that certain range, let's suppose. But let's say one day I wake up and it's a kilo more. I need to observe it. I shouldn't react to that. I should be like, holy shit, I've gained an extra kilo. So I got to do A, B, C, D, from tomorrow, I'm just not going to ever have sugar again in my life. That's me just reacting to it. That's me getting emotional, right? That's me panicking. The idea is to understand that a metric is simply telling you what is happening. It's simply showing you the result of your efforts. If you learn to observe them without getting emotional, then your response to what you observe will be rational. If you let yourself get emotional based on the data, based on whatever you're tracking, then you won't be responding, you'll be reacting. And your reaction will be a knee-jerk reaction, will be something that you would probably not do, when you're calm. So the thing to remember, find your metrics, track them, observe them. Second point, address deviations quickly. Do keep in mind, you will only know you're deviating if you track. If you don't track, you won't even know if you're deviating. Let me give you a very simple example. This happens every single year for millions, if not billions of people. Okay? Every year, start of the year, resolutions, right? I want to lose weight. This is my year's goal. Everyone says that. What happens? January, February, everyone's kind of sort of on track. Okay, why? Because they are tracking their metrics, their body weight, part of some program, whatever it is. Let's say you're in March. At the end of March, either people have achieved their goals, or if they've already given up, or life has happened and they've forgotten about it. So what happens once April comes in is that you're not even tracking. You don't even realize whether you're on track or whether you're off track. In fact, most people realize that they've gained weight only by May or June or July, when, I don't know, clothes start fitting tighter, or they see a photo of themselves, or they have to get on a scale for whatever reason, and they're like, I can't believe I gained 4 kilos or 5 kilos in this time. I didn't even realize I gained weight, right? And this is what people say, weight gain creeps up on you. Okay, it doesn't creep up on you. Truth is, you've been closing your eyes. You've not been seeing it. You haven't been tracking it. And you're surprised when you finally see it. Make sense? Yeah. The idea is you want to keep tracking. And once you track, now here's the second point here, right? You address deviations quickly. Let's use the GPS example. You're driving from one way to another. Your GPS tells you have to go this way. But somehow along the way, you get distracted, something, there's an ice cream shop or whatever, and you take a right turn when you should not. The sooner you realize that, and the sooner you course correct, the lesser time you're wasting. But if you don't realize it and you just keep going after taking that wrong turn, you realize that it's going to take you much longer to get back on track. Right? Using a body weight example, if you weigh yourself regularly, and if you're aware when you're gaining that half a kilo, like I said in the first point, then you can address it quickly enough. So you've gained half a kilo. How long does it take you, do you think, to lose half a kilo? Maybe a few days, right? And then you'll be on track. But let's say you gain weight and you don't know it, you keep gaining weight, and you only realize it when you've gained 5 or 6 kilos. How long do you think it's going to take you to lose 5 or 6 kilos? It's going to take you months, right? So the key here is, once you start tracking your metrics, you will understand when deviations happen. And the sooner you course correct, the lesser you need to course correct, right? So if you know something's off, act on it, address it as soon as possible, instead of just letting it linger till it gets worse. Right? Illnesses are a good example. Let's say someone is unwell. When you find symptoms early on, it is easier to treat that illness than letting the symptoms progress, get worse, and then trying to treat it. Would you guys agree? Yeah. Same thing, right? So think about it, something like that. You're off track, quickly get back on track. Don't wait for this to get bigger than it needs to be. That's number 2. Point number 3. This is hard, so we'll talk about this. You want to compensate. There is nothing wrong with compensating. Okay? But you want to compensate without overcompensating. Small example. Let's say you overeat one night. Usually you hear people saying, don't compensate, just get back on track, right? Getting back on track basically means compensating. Right? You've overeaten tonight. Tomorrow morning, you don't have to eat, or you don't have to eat as much as you usually do. Why? You have enough food in your system. That is compensating. You're compensating by eating a little less the next morning, sure. But just because you overate last night, if you don't eat the entire day the next day, or you try to throw up whatever you ate, that is overcompensating. Or running 100 kilometers, saying, I'm just going to burn everything that I, ate extra last night. That is overcompensating. And why should you not overcompensate? Very simple. When you overcompensate, you end up hurting yourself. Very literally. Okay. Just use these examples. Let's say you overate the previous night. So you decide breakfast and lunch, I'm not going to eat. Or I'm only going to eat vegetables or fruits or whatever, right? You're basically beating up your gut. You're overloading it the previous night and you're giving it nothing the next night, the next day. Right? Let's use exercise. So you overate last night. You were supposed to go for a 5K run this morning. Instead, you go for a 20-kilometer run. You're messing with your training, right? You're punishing your knees and your ankles and your lower back simply because your tongue and your brain decided to do something the previous night. Doesn't fit, right? So overcompensation, while it makes sense in our head, it is more a process of making ourselves feel better. It's not a rational physiological process. It's an emotional process, overcompensation. Okay, we do this in so many aspects of our life. We get mad at someone, then we realize we made a mistake, and then we go and praise the same person. Makes zero sense, right? But it's more about emotionally taking care of yourself. It's not physiological, right? Anytime you feel like overcompensating, you need to remember that. Overcompensation only ends up hurting you. Maybe not in the first time, but definitely the second time. Use driving as an example, okay? So let's say I was supposed to go from point A to point B in 30 minutes. But along the way, well, I got distracted. So I stopped somewhere or I took a wrong turn, whatever. Now I realize that I've lost 10 minutes. If I try to overcompensate and drive really fast on the road, jumping red lights, do you think that's a smart thing to do? It's not. I'm probably going to hurt myself. I'm probably going to hurt someone else. And I'm definitely going to be an ass to everyone around me, right? Because now I'm panicking and I have to overcompensate, right? So we don't want to do that. Instead, we want to simply compensate. So that's why nudge yourself, don't shove. If you feel that something's off, take a second. You did something wrong the previous night. Let's say you had too much to drink, ate too much. Just tell yourself that's okay. It's a long journey. All I need to do is to course correct. All I need to do is to compensate a little bit for what I overdid yesterday. That's it. I don't have to beat myself up. All of this involves definitely being kind to yourself. Okay, that's the hardest bit for most of us. The very fact that we expect ourselves to be perfect means that we're not being kind to ourselves, because you would not have that expectation on a friend or with your kids or with your or colleagues, right? You understand that people are not perfect, but somehow we think we need to be. And that's why we try to shove. That's why we, talk down to ourselves. We're like, you always binge eat, right? You never are able to do this. How many times have you been through this program up and down, right? We keep talking to ourselves that way. So remember, it's definitely okay to compensate, but without overcompensating. Okay. Point number 4, this is very specific to fitness, nutrition to a certain extent, but think like a generalist and not like a specialist. Okay. Now, what I mean by that is when we say staying on track, we're always thinking that the only way to stay on track is to do that exact thing over and over and over again. But as a generalist, you can try new things. Let's take fitness as an example. Let's say you're someone who usually does strength training, right? Or let's say you've registered at a place like the Quad or wherever you are, and you have to go for classes. Let's say you miss a class. So what? Go for a walk. You get out there and go for a run. Do some burpees in your kitchen, whatever. You can do something, right? Once you embrace that, then you realize there is not just one track, there are multiple tracks, and I have the option of picking them whenever I want to. Especially with fitness, this trying new things is very, very, very important. Think about it this way. Now, let's say you are a runner, and let's say the only skill you have is running, right? Fitness-based skill. So what do? You end up running over and over and over again. I used to do that. All I knew to do was to run. So I would look forward to running. I would run different distances every day. I would run different speeds every day, different tempos every day, but I would run every day. If I did not run one day, it feels like I'm slacking, right? So that was my activity. That was my exercise. So I would just run. And then what happened? I twisted my ankle. And I realized I can't do anything now because I only knew to do one thing. That was running. And once my ankle was out and I couldn't run, the entire concept of fitness fell flat. I can't do anything related to fitness, right? But then I realized that, okay, it can't work like that. Everything cannot be dependent on just one thing. So over a period of time, I've gathered a whole set of skills. I can work with a kettlebell, I can work with a barbell, I can do jump ropes, I can run, I can do body weight work, I can do animal flow, right? So much. I can work with a sandbag. I don't know. I can play a few sports. There are so many options there. So when I can try new things, it is easier for me to stay on track with respect to fitness. It gives me variety, yes. But when one thing is not possible, I can do another thing. Right? If you're someone who plays sport, let's say someone plays football and you like playing football, what happens when it rains? Can't play football, so I'm just going to sit at home and drink beer. Right? That can't be your only two options. If I can't play football, so what? I'm going to go do something else that's active. Right? At the end of the day, you want to remember that you are trying to help yourself lead a better life, better quality of life. And for that, activity is important. And you want to stay consistent with activity. So as long as you're doing something at all points of time, you are good to go. And you're going to be able to do something at all points of time only if you have a big enough toolkit. If you have large enough or wide enough interests. If you're very specific, I will only do this. And I tell my students this all the time, right? Now, if you're telling me that the only way you can train is if you can show up at the quad, at this center, at this time. That's the only way you will train. If that doesn't happen, the entire day, there's no movement, there's no training, then you're never going to be fit. Right? Because life is never going to, kind of present itself in such a way that you're able to hit that exact hour, exact space, exact time consistently forever. Right? Basically, we're making ourselves dependent on one or two things, which is not helping us in the long term. And for you to be able to try new things, one important thing is to remember, it's okay to be bad at stuff. Only if you're a specialist do you need to be worried about not being good at something. Okay? Let's say you're a professional table tennis player. You better be good at table tennis. Well, if not, well, there's nothing there, right? But as long as you're someone who's after health, wellness, fitness, happiness, things like that, you really want to think like a generalist. You do not want to specialize. And the more tools you have, the more options you have. And the more options you have, the easier it is for you on a day when things are not going your way. I don't have 60 minutes to train today. So what? Do something for 20 minutes. But I don't know what to do in 20 minutes. There you go. That's the problem. Right? But if you realize that any amount of time is fine, 20 minutes is better than 0 minutes. I can always catch up the next day. And I have the following things I can work on, then it becomes much simpler for you to be able to do something, right? So open up that toolkit, add more tools to it. It could be dance, it could be sport, it could be a different tool, it could be a different format of training, it can be a different type of exercise, right? It could be with a different group of people, depends on who you are. It need not be like what it is for someone else. So try new things and think like a generalist. Your focus is on movement. And this movement can happen in so many different ways. As long as you're doing what you can today, you are still on track. Okay? That said, the last point that you want to remember, it's a powerful line. So take a second to understand this. Okay? Learn to rest, not quit. How often do we quit and how often do we take a step back and say, I'm resting and I'm going to come back? Especially with fitness. When things don't go well, we usually tend to give up. Yeah? I am on some program for 3 months. 6 weeks in, I'm not able to stay consistent. So what do? Throw in the towel. If we are unable to do something well, we end up quitting. The key here is, when something's not going well, it's okay to just take a break and come back to it. We don't have to give up on it. And we do this in many aspects of our life, definitely, but almost always with fitness and movement and exercise. Why? Two reasons. One is because it's hard to find the time. And number two, it's hard to do the work. And we have certain expectations of ourselves. And when things don't go well, it's easier for us to say, you know what, this is not working. I am just going to quit. But it would be so much better for ourselves to say, you know what, it's not going well. I get it. I'm going to take a break. I'll give it a week or a month off. And what am I going to do during that break? Try new things. I'll try something else. And then I'll come back to it. Okay, I'll use an example, say, from my life. See, there are a lot of movements I like doing. Okay, for example, this deadlifts and double unders, let's suppose. Okay, now for the last couple of years or so, I haven't deadlifted, but I've deadlifted for a very, very, very long time. Why? Because I was working on something else, and my life was structured in such a way that I was doing these other things. But lately, the structure of my life has changed, so I don't get access to the things that I got access to, say, a few months ago. But I have a barbell at home. I know how to deadlift. I simply have to do this instead of that. I don't have to quit. I just have to take a break from something else. And when I'm taking a break, I refill that space with something else that I want to do. Right? Again, the key is to go in that direction, not do the same thing over and over and over again. Right? So the specificity here, you draw the line how specific you need to be. If you are a specialist, you will be very specific. Right? Think about it from a music perspective. Let's say you're a pianist. You have to play the piano every day to get better. But let's say you're not a pianist, but let's say you're just someone who enjoys music. Then you're not limited to the piano. You're just someone who enjoys music. The same thing with art, the same thing with sport, the same thing with fitness. Right? So do remember this. When things don't go well, quitting is not the only option. In fact, it should be the last option ever. When things don't go well, don't quit. At the same time, you don't have to push through and keep going. You can take a break. You can rest for some time. Try new things during that some time. And you'll realize that you feel re-energized at the end of it. And you're able to get back on track much faster than you would than if you quit. Make sense? So putting this together, 5 points, right? Number one, identify your metrics. What is your goal? What is it that you want? What is it that you are working towards? Identify your goal, identify your metrics. Once you identify these two, track them as regularly as you can, but without attaching emotion to it. Even if it's your body weight, no emotion. You're just tracking it. It's just a checkpoint. Number two, if and when you deviate, and you definitely will deviate because everyone in the world deviates. If and when you deviate, course correct as quickly as you can. The sooner you course correct, the lesser work you have to do. Number three, when you realize you've deviated, compensate. There's nothing wrong with it, but just don't overcompensate. Don't hurt yourself, right? Don't react, respond. And number four, when you're course correcting, feel free to try new things. Don't limit yourself by saying, this is the only thing I will do. Be more open-minded, and please be okay with being bad at things. You don't have to be amazing at everything. So think like a generalist, someone who you're a fitness enthusiast. You're someone who wants to improve your quality of life, not a specialist. And that's okay. And this is something I remind myself often. I remind my coaches often also. We are coaches, not athletes. So if your squat drops by 5%, so what? If you press two reps less, that's okay. It will always come back later, right? So think like a generalist. And finally, when things don't go well, and there will definitely be times when things don't go well at all. Many times during the year, next year for sure. When things don't go well, take a break, step back, rest, recover, and come back. Don't give up. Okay? As simple as that. Well, all these 5 things, the way I explained them seem like they're big picture. When you try and apply these things to you specifically, you'll realize that it's actually very simple to execute. Right? I'm explaining this with a general person in mind, but you have a very specific person in mind. That is you. So I would encourage you to do the following for after this session. Find your goals, write down what your metrics are, and figure out how you're going to track them. Number 1. As you track, if you find that there's some deviation, quickly try and address it. Addressing, do it by nudging and not by shoving, because the sooner you address it, the lesser work you have to do. Right? And please think about trying one new thing over the next week. Whatever it is for you. It need not be something that goes out of your way. You can even say, you know what, I'm going to try squatting with one leg. It's called the pistol squat. I'm just going to try it. You may not have it. I'm just saying, try new things. And finally, I don't know when this will happen, but it will happen in your life. Things will not go well. Something will happen. When that happens, please, if you can, remember this slide and try not to quit. Just try to take a break and come back. Okay. So that's that with respect to what you need to do. We have another 10 minutes left. Any questions, just bring them on. Let's talk about it. You don't have to raise your hand, just unmute and go for it.
Oh, so hi, this is Ramki.
Hi.
I've been following you for quite some time, and what caught my eyes was you talking about movements, which is exactly why I've been doing running for the past 2 years. So I kind of feel like there is no consistency in my running, and it makes me feel good to go out and exercise, and that's the reason why I didn't hit gym until recently. So it was very difficult for me to sort of compensate for that running that I do for like 45 minutes, and the ropes just don't give me the satisfaction of running outside. How to compensate that and how to like make yourself feel better for not running on rainy days or say pollution on account of pollution or something. And I've started to hit the gym. I've been doing a bit of weight training also. So how do I even address the issue of getting satisfied with whatever I do? So yeah.
Got it. Great question. So for everyone else, what he's talking when he says satisfaction of training, what he's talking about is a training effect. Okay, like you should feel like you've done something. Yeah, and for each person, this is different, right? And as a runner, you're someone who usually gets used to that running high, right? Because you feel a certain way at the end of a run. You may not feel the same way at all after a strength training session. Okay, but that's also like eating 2 different kinds of foods. Right? Obviously, if you're eating a biryani, which is basically mostly rice with some meat, there's a certain type of satisfaction. Right? At the same time, if you're eating, I don't know, say grilled chicken or chicken wings or whatever that is, something that's more protein rich, that's a different kind of satisfaction. 2 different foods. They're both filling you up. They're both nourishing you, but you feel differently after both meals. Right? If you expect to feel like how you feel after eating biryani every day, it's going to be hard for you to replicate that feeling. Right? So my first recommendation would be try to not get addicted to that one feeling, because then you will try to replicate that. Okay. Now, this happens a lot. Don't get me wrong. This happens in so many ways. It happens in training also, because this is also like a drug, right? What happens when you take a drug, for example, is chemicals are released in your body. When you exercise, also chemicals are released in your body. This is what we mean by saying don't chase fatigue. So at the end of every training session, if you want to feel tired and weak, that's not a productive training session. Does that make sense? Right? Because any coach can make anyone tired. Basically, move your arms and legs enough to get tired. Right? But that's not the end result. The end result of your training need not be fatigue and exhaustion. You want to start looking into what you are achieving during that training session. Yeah. Now, to specifically answer your question, you will not be able to replicate that same training effect from running. Someone who enjoys strength training will have the opposite problem as you. Like, I love it when I'm lifting something heavy. That feeling is great. I don't get it from running. Why should I run? Yeah. So go back to try to be a generalist. And what I would say is, I'd say try out a few different versions. Because like I initially explained, if running is your only option, then when it's raining or when there's pollution or when you are hurt, you can't run. And that as a result, you're going to end up doing nothing. So it becomes running or nothing. What if you can find a few more options for you? You said the jump rope, right? But you can't do 45 minutes of jump rope, right? Your ankles, can't take it. But if endurance is your thing, there are other things that you can do. There's a treadmill, there's a stationary bike, there's swimming, things like that. But in essence, you want to try and explore other methods of movement. Yeah, you can do this with a kettlebell, you can do it with a barbell, you can do it with body weight, but you have to learn some skills to do it. Right? You should learn how to squat, how to jump, how to do burpees. You can recreate that same effect without running. Yeah. So try new things, add more skills to your toolkit. Over the next 5 years or 10 years, right? If you can add a bunch of skills, again, I want you to think about the next 40 years of your life. You can't just run. The more skills you add, the easier it gets for you to stay fit, stay on track for a very, very, very long time. Right? And the double unders thing that I told you, double unders basically is like, jump rope, right? Instead of the rope going under your leg once, it goes in twice. So it's a hard thing to do, right? So something that you have to learn. So I learned to do that as a skill almost, I want to say 8-9 years ago. Okay. Then I've used it intermittently. And for the last 4 or 5 years, I haven't even done it. But now, if I have to do it, it will come right back to me. It's like riding a bicycle. Once you've learned to ride a bicycle, you can always ride a bicycle. Right? So invest the time in learning a few more skills, and then you learn how to mix it up. You will make running and these other skills a part of your workout. Then everything comes together beautifully. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
So I want to know, one is how many metrics are ideal to track? And the second thing is, how do we know that our metrics are in line with our goal? For example, one of my goals is weight loss, and I have been running all along. My sense is that even earlier, you increase your cardio if you want to lose weight. But of late, my trainer has told me to do cardio only once a week and weight train thrice, obviously with some diet control. And I'm just not able, I find it contradictory to the goal I want to achieve.
Understood. Okay, but good question for sure. I'll address this in 2 ways. See, one is how many metrics can you track? Not too many, okay, is honestly the right answer. But if I have to give you a number, I'd say anything more than 3 is too many. Okay, so if let's say you're tracking your body weight, let's say you're tracking your strength levels on something, and let's say you're tracking your, I don't know, running or your sleep, it's good enough, because there is no limit to the number of metrics you can track, honestly, especially given how things are today with smartwatches and gadgets and stuff. You can track a ton, and it's confusing. And 2 things happen when you track too many metrics. One is you lose sight of the more important metrics because you're diluting with everything, because you want everything to keep moving forward, and it's not possible. Second thing is, when your key metrics are not doing well, you try and compensate for that by working on another metric, right? As a result, you're not working towards your goal, you're just going around in circles, right? So anything more than 3 metrics, I'd say, would be too much. Okay, number 1. Number 2, regarding how do you identify the metric based on your goal, right? So I'll use your example. You said weight loss is one of your goals, right? Then it doesn't matter what you do as long as your weight is going the right direction. Whether you run once a week, whether you run 5 times a week, doesn't matter, because your goal is weight going down. Now, Ramakrishnan, before this, he spoke to us about running. His goal, based on what he told us, was his goal is to feel a certain way at the end of a workout. That's his goal during the workout, right? So he has to achieve that. Your goal is the result. His goal is the effort. Mm-hmm. So why I'm saying this is because you can lose weight running every day or doing cardio every day. You can lose weight doing cardio once a week. You can even lose weight doing 0 cardio. There are so many ways to get to your goal. Mm-hmm. So you only need to track the metric that is relevant to your goal, not relevant to your effort. Yeah. So let's say your goal is weight loss and your weight is dropping by doing cardio once a week. Technically, you should be happy. My goal is to reduce weight. That's happening. How does it matter what's happening here? But let's say your goal is to lose weight by doing cardio. It's a complicated goal. You shouldn't have it. But if that's the goal, then you want to try to stick to, okay, 5 days of cardio should lead to that. Right? So my point here is that try and simplify your goals. And you can change your goals every month or every 2 months. You can have a much larger goal for 5 years, right? Different things. But simplify your goal. The simpler it is, the easier it is for you to hack it. Right? The more layers you add, the more complicated it gets, and you find yourself trapped.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Polo. Okay, it looks like I missed a question here. After a meal, what should be the ideal gap before we strength train? Is taking an afternoon nap okay? How long is advisable? Well, I mean, after a meal, it depends on how you're feeling, to be very honest, right? Like if you're feeling good, if you're feeling light, if you feel like you're ready to, start training, then 30 minutes from now is fine. It also depends on what you ate. If you ate like full meals, then you'll have to give it a few hours before you start training. So go based on comfort. Is it advisable? How long is advisable afternoon nap? Absolutely. I mean, if the structure of your day allows you to take an afternoon nap, especially if you're not someone who gets to sleep too much at night, afternoon naps are awesome, helpful, great. How long is advisable also depends on how your night sleep is. If you're sleeping, 6-7 hours at night, you just need a tiny nap in the afternoon. I'd say 30 minutes or less, so you don't end up feeling groggy. But if you're trying to make up for sleep that you missed at night, or say if you're like one of the quad coaches, right, where we wake up very, very early in the morning at 3:30, then the nap is actually a part of your sleep. And that can be an hour, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, based on how much you need to refill that gap. Another question here, is it okay to train every day, but different timing, like a day in the morning, like day in the evening? Yeah, absolutely. Of course. Totally fine. You can do that. But just make sure your recovery is well. That is, we call it today and tomorrow, but if you train at 8 p.m. tonight and then at 6 a.m. tomorrow, it all falls within 12 hours, right? So your body hasn't had a chance to recover. So make sure there's enough recovery. That said, if you're lifting, strength training tonight at 8, and if you're going for a run at 6 tomorrow, that's okay. Different modalities of training, they can be balanced out pretty well. Another question here. Is it okay? Oh, yeah, I got that one.
What's your take on investing in a smartwatch?
I like it. I mean, depends on what your budget is and what your goals are. I've tried smartwatches at different points of time over the last 15 years. Initially, they were just barometers that didn't really do much at all. But today, though, technology has caught up quite a bit, and you get good data, like accurate data. That said, to get accurate data, good data, you're going to have to pay quite a bit. I mean, you have smartwatches starting at like 1,000 rupees, and they go on, all the way to like 2.5 lakhs, right? The $1,000 ones are great parameters, but even that, they're not really accurate. You walk 1,000 steps, it might say 700, 600, things like that. So what I would suggest is think about what you are trying to do. If you're looking at performance, something like Garmin is great, right? Because they're really good with their metrics. They're very accurate and stuff like that. But if you're looking for a smartwatch experience, that is, I don't know, I want to watch a movie on my watch, or I want to take calls, I want to, do all that, then maybe Apple smartwatch is better, right? But depends on what you're looking for in that smartwatch. Even though you pick a smartwatch, you will have to be careful about the metrics that you're tracking, because a smartwatch will throw a whole bunch of metrics, at you. So you need to be smart enough to understand, okay, this is what I'm going to be tracking. But if you find something that fits your goals, definitely recommend it.
It's okay to wear it while sleeping.
Yeah. See, usually with smartwatches, there are performance metrics or stats and health metrics or stats, right? The performance stuff, for you to get that, if that's all you're focused on, then just use it during the day when you're walking, when you're training, things like that. If you want to understand your health stats, what's your resting heart rate, breathing rate, right? HRV, things like that, you'll have to wear it when you're sleeping at night also.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Cool. We'll do one last question. I know we're past 10:30. So we have a question from Rajani here. I've been doing Pilates thrice a week for 10 months. Enjoy it a lot, but my weight isn't budging. I'm trying to incorporate different exercises as well and controlling the diet, but I'm confused as to what I'm doing wrong, kind of losing motivation now. So first thing I want to tell you, Rajani, is you're losing motivation. I'm glad you spotted that. Okay, this is basically addressing it. Remember, don't quit, rest, take a break. Yeah, and that's okay. Now, as far as your question itself is concerned, from your question, it feels like there's too much emphasis on exercise, little emphasis on nutrition, because you've mentioned, say, Pilates, thrice a week, incorporating different exercises, as well as controlling your diet. I would ask you to flip it around. Exercise plays a very, very small role in weight loss. Nutrition plays the huge role. Okay? Even if you're someone who trains every day, chances are you're burning about 300 to 500 calories on an average from exercise. That's it. Okay? You're burning another 1,500 calories just by doing nothing. Nutrition is where you can make the difference. Right? So what I would suggest, Rajani, is look into your nutrition, see what you're doing wrong there. There's something that's off there. And the reason I'm saying something's off there is 2 plus 2 will always be 4. Okay? So if you are eating lesser and if you are creating that calorie deficit, then you will see a change in body weight. If your body weight is just where it is, that means there's not enough of a calorie deficit. That's what you need to look into. So if you're working with a nutritionist or a nutrition coach, get back to them, maybe ask them to look into it. If you're not working with anyone, I'd strongly recommend getting someone to look into your nutrition and giving you feedback on what you can change. But the issue is with the nutrition, very rarely with exercise. Okay, folks. Cool. I think we'll close it with this. I think I got all the questions. Thank you so much for making it this morning.
Sorry to interrupt, Pooja here.
No problem. No problem. Please go ahead.
We have 2 minutes.
Yes,
So I have a question to ask that, I do strength training thrice a week. So that's more of an anaerobic activity for me. And I'm not sure how to build an aerobic base, given that I have a severe injury in my pelvis and knee from a cycling accident. So I can't cycle, I can't run as per my doctor. I don't like to swim. So I don't know how to build an aerobic base. If you have some insights, that will be great.
Okay. What is it you don't like to what?
Swim.
Swim. Okay.
So swimming, running, and cycling is out. Cycling and running is kind of, told not to do.
Understood.
And swimming I tried, but I don't like it. And I don't know what else can build my aerobic base because I'm just working a lot on my anaerobic, but not much on my aerobic.
Got it. See, aerobic is essentially about getting your heart rate high, but not too high. Okay? And you can, any activity that gets your heart rate high, but not too high will fall under aerobic. And by aerobic, I'm talking about 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. Now, your max heart rate, very rough calculation, is 220 minus your age. Now, let's say you're 20 years old, just saying, right? So 220 minus 20 is 200. So your max heart rate is 200. So 60 to 70% of that is 120 to 140 beats per minute. So any activity that keeps your heart rate within that zone is aerobic in nature.
Right.
You can do this. You can walk. And when I say walk, you can walk up an incline. Okay, that will get your heart rate up more than just regular walking, but it'll be lesser than running. It'll be just right, number one. Number two, you can consider rucking. Rucking is basically walking with a backpack. Okay, so you take 15, 20 kilos, wear the backpack, and you actually get rucksacks, not a regular bag, but then rucksacks will make sure the load is not on your neck and your lower back and stuff, right? So get a rucksack and walk for 30, 40 minutes. That will also do it. That's it. Swimming, simply because you don't like it, I'd say do it. The reason is you will burn a bunch more calories if you are working on inefficient exercise. Okay.
What do you mean by inefficient?
So if you're inefficient at something, your body has to work harder to get that activity done.
Right.
Right. So as a result, it'll end up burning more energy. Right? So if you're not good at swimming, right? Take two cases. Case one, you're good at swimming. Case two, you're not good at swimming. For the same distance, when you're not good at swimming, your body has to expend more energy to get you there.
Okay.
Why anytime you learn a new skill, it feels tiring. But someone who's been doing this for a while is just able to breeze through it. Make sense? So try and bring that. Yeah. But as far
Thank
as
you so much.
because you already strength train, you can use a bunch of those movements for building your aerobic base also. Now, let's say you know to squat, you know to do swings, you know to do deadlifts, you know to do presses, you know to do, I don't know, push-ups, right? All these things. What you can do is you can build a circuit with these moves, but at a much lower intensity. Let's say you usually squat 50 kilos. For an aerobic base exercise, I mean, workout, you only want to squat 10 kilos or maybe even just body weight.
Mhm.
But the
Okay.
idea is to keep moving without stopping, but at a low enough intensity. So think about it like this. Say you're doing 30 seconds of squats, right? Then you're doing 30 seconds of ab cycles. Right? Then you're doing some walking. Then you're doing some push-ups, right? You're doing low intensity work, but chained together for a long period of time without doing anything too intense or without actually taking a break by stopping. Does that make sense?
Yeah, got it. Thank you so much.
Nothing, anytime. Okay, cool. Once again, thank you all for making it here on a Saturday morning. I hope this was useful. Have a lovely weekend.